The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm CJ. Chip is in Boston today, so I'd like to welcome our guests. As we said, we've invited city council candidates and school committee candidates to come and present their positions to the people of Fall River. And as you know, we've been having some real difficult times getting some people that we really wanted. But right now, I'd like to introduce Tim Cole, and here he is. Tim is a candidate for city council.
Good morning.
And good morning. And I've got one of your campaign cards.
Yeah, my flag.
There it is, right side up. It's very informative. So, why should the people of Fall River vote for you for city council? What are you going to offer them that's different from other people?
Yeah, well, I think I offer a valuable skill set in terms of my experience, my education, with my master's degree in city and regional planning. My background in economic development, I have an MBA, I'm a banker, I understand finance, and frankly my passion for the city, my hope to be fair, to the people in Fall River. I really do have an interest in representing all the people of Fall River and not just the people who vote for me. I'm not afraid to speak my mind. And sometimes when I feel passionately about something that's not right, I will speak my mind. I'm courageous. Frankly, I think those are good reasons, and I think you get to know me a little bit, and you'll probably find a few more.
Well, that's good to know. I'm looking over your campaign card here. I mean, you have quite the resume. Quite the resume.
That's the shortest resume I've ever printed.
Oh, I'll tell you, space is the limited on these things.
Yep.
But this is a slightly larger than life card. But I noticed you have a master's in city and regional planning.
Yes, sir.
From UNC Chapel Hill.
Yes, sir.
A master's of business administration from UMass Dartmouth. Boy, talk about two totally different schools. And I know what that's like because I went to BCC, UMass, Dartmouth, and then I went to University of Minnesota.
Yeah.
So you gotta expand your horizons. That's what I say.
Well, you know what? If you were at University of Minnesota, then you've lived outside of the community for a while. So you like myself, you lived in Fall River, for a good portion of your life. You moved away. Yes, and came back.
Yes.
And you gain some experience from doing that. I also think that's something that I bring to the table. I have seen successful, thriving cities. I've lived in them. I've contributed to them, and I can see us achieving that, getting back to that in Fall River.
Well, I mean, that's something that we hear a lot from in the campaign season, and we always see the incumbents doing things that people have been asking for the previous year, but all of a sudden it just doesn't happen. And as you said, you're not going to just represent the people who vote for you. You're going to represent the entire city, and that's a big calling. That really is a big calling. People are going to wonder, why should I vote for Tim Cole? What would he do for me that nobody else is doing? So
before I ever ran for politics, I sought out to get a master's degree. I started off with an internship at Froed, coming out of, it was like a scholarship program, frankly, coming out of high school. And that taught me a little bit of what economic development was and how the things that you can do, to impact the community and help to better it. And so, eventually, that's why I chose to go to school, because I did grow up in a community like Fall River that needs that type of help. I wasn't sure, I hoped, I guess, one day that I would be back in Fall River and could put those skills to use. But, I knew I could put them to use somewhere, and that mattered. So, I guess what that proves is that I have a commitment to the professionalism, first of all, and and to my community. I've been thinking of it my whole lifetime in terms of what we can do to improve the city. It's something we've all been thinking about for a long time.
Well, we seem to be having some improvement. I haven't been the biggest supporter of Jason Correa the past year or so,
Yeah.
and but I always give people credit where credit is due. He has done a significant amount of work to bring Fall River closer to what his vision was. And his vision was beneficial. I mean, we're fixing streets, we're fixing sidewalks, although I don't agree with the streetscapes program. I think that was just wasted money.
Yeah.
And it benefited a lot of his friends. He's obviously gotten rid of the purple bags, which Fall River hated from day one.
Right.
And I don't think they hated them because they were $2. I think they hated them because they were just rolled out inappropriately. Instead of giving it a 6-month period to teach the people what they were doing, they just threw them out there and said, pay. And people just weren't happy with that.
I think somebody wasn't listening at one level or another on that issue. Yeah.
Exactly. And those are previous administrations. The elephant in the room, for the lack of a better expression, or the elephant on the air. You made a comment on Facebook, and then you repeated that comment at the Maplewood Neighborhood Association meeting in regards to Kathy Ann Viveris' write-in campaign.
Kathy Ann Viveris was at the Maplewood Neighborhood Association meeting,
I liked because you don't say it behind their back, you say it right to their face.
That's right. I just want to make that point. I'm not, I had the opportunity to say something directly that I attempted to say directly, and I felt like needed to be said immediately. And what do? We go to social media. I am a candidate that gives me a platform, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it to call out the appearance of corruption anywhere it pops up.
Well, it's interesting because what will be coming out shortly is the fact that Kathy Ann Viveris bought a property here in Fall River for approximately $89,000. She did some remodeling to it, and they then reassessed it at $133. Meanwhile, all the other properties in that area were at $260. The assessor's office gave the excuse that we couldn't gain access to the building to complete the assessment. But they miraculously completed that assessment when it came to their knowledge that everyone else was knowing about it. And for approximately 3 or 4 years, she was paying taxes on $133. And even for the rest of this fiscal year, she'll be paying taxes on $133. This is where people in Fall River get aggravated and they get upset because I would like to pay pay taxes on $133 on my own.
I can't speak to this specific story.
I'm not asking you to speak, but I'm just saying, I'm giving you a basic venue of, or a basic vision of, this is what the people of Fall River are upset about.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to be good actors and make sure that the people, the people want value is the key, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
The taxpayer wants value for their tax dollar, and that includes, avoiding mishaps and scandals and negative publicity, things that have negative value, unfortunately that can pop up, the way they have. And, so you have to avoid those things. You have to act with integrity and, have ethical behavior that's sustainable and professional.
I agree. And, one of the things that I believe that the Fall River taxpayer wouldn't mind paying more taxes as long as they were getting something from it, as long as they're getting their streets repaired, as long as they were getting their trash picked up, as long as they were getting, as you said, value for the buck.
Yep. And obviously that needs to be, there needs to be some equity to, that spending where the streets are repaired can't all be on the same side of town. I get, we all understand that. There is equity. We need to make sure the whole city is represented is my point. In terms of the services of the city. I mean, just like a business, again, I am a banker and I'm familiar with, customer service. right? And a customer calls the bank, and you do your very best to get them that answer. You don't know quite. In my role, I'm not a teller, I'm a commercial lender. I mean, I get a lot of different questions thrown at me every day, and you do your very best to get them an honest, clear, concise answer, in the quickest amount of time, right? And that should be the same way we're operating with our city services. That's how you have you have happy taxpayers,
Yeah,
where they
exactly.
feel like they're getting value,
Exactly.
including the paved streets and all of that. And when your kids are getting a good education, and when all of a sudden because of that good education, they get a chance from the scholarship city to get a scholarship and go away, like so many of us did. But now they don't have to necessarily go away on a one-way ticket and sort of never return home. They'll have access to job opportunities in Boston, via a reasonable commute on a train. And that's a huge difference for the community. I mean, I always say it's sort of like, it's not a silver bullet, and it's going to be more like a drip in the bucket that accumulates over the years, but that's economically. Socially, it is a huge asset. All of a sudden, it unlocks that potential. Kids that are graduating from high school going forward, maybe, maybe they live at home. Sorry, kids, and take the train into campus, or perhaps after they graduate, that's their way to move back to Fall River and contribute in the community while still having access to a job for someone with a degree, and it allows us to attract those folks back to the community.
Yeah, that's one of the things I call the brain drain that Fall River has, because our children go away to school. I mean, not just to Boston, but New York, New Jersey. They go away, and they don't come back. They don't come back. I know people that have gone to school in New York, and they're still living in New York, and they're like, well, I'm not going back to Fall River because Fall River hasn't had anything to offer me. There haven't been jobs. We don't have a tech industry here, what a lot of our students are going into now. But one of the things I think is important, and before this show went on the air today, our state delegation was here.
Yeah.
And they were getting their show ready for their November broadcast. And one of the things they were talking about was the fact that the construction company here at the high school, Suffolk Construction, they offer apprenticeship programs. And they've got a whole division of their company which offers that. That's a payback not only to the city by building a new high school, but by offering city residents apprenticeship programs in construction, which are good paying jobs. They're very good paying jobs. And that's one of the things that my co-host Chip and I support greatly is vocational training, because they, some plumbers, some electricians make more money than doctors do and surgeons do.
No, absolutely.
And they can make a good living at doing that. They just have to have the training available for them. And we have it at the high school level, but the high school is overpacked at Diamond, and now the New Durfee is going to be offering it. But again, how many hours are they going to get actually in the vocational section? Because that's going to be very important.
I'm sure it would, in terms of their certifications.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's going to be nice to see. But one of the things I've noticed here on your card, and I love your card, by the way. I really do. It's easy to read, nice bullet points. You speak about a lot. Expand the tax base, but not the tax rate. That's something a lot of taxpayers are upset about, because every year, 2.5%, no matter what. And I mean,
and the argument is you're locked into it. If we don't do it 2.5% now, then we're down on our next 2.5%. It won't have as much of an impact. No, I think that our goal ultimately should be to drive our revenue growth for the city by putting on back online, properties that have been offline, or encouraging new development in the city, right? So basically, you're adding new property to the tax base, and you're taxing that instead of increasing the rate. The opportunity is now. I do think we've probably lost a little time unfortunately, in terms of working with businesses to take advantage of the environment and the planned investment that we have with the rail and, Route 79, going down and what we're going to be doing with the waterfront, offshore wind industry. There's a lot going on, but clearly nothing's been inked, and you can't ignore the other elephant in the room, which is the corruption scandal.
Right, and that's been something that we've seen, and I mean, we now have an acting mayor who's stepping in, who is the city council president. He's stepping in and he's starting to clean house a little bit, and thankfully he is. I mean, I have a great deal of respect for Cliff Ponte, and hopefully he'll be one of your colleagues on the city council because he's, he has a good vision, I think, for what he expects the city council to do.
Cliff's a professional.
He is. And that's what we need more of. We need more professionals in our city council that can work together. Yep. One of the big arguments that we had, because as you know, we had a debt exclusion for this school, was the fact that it was brought up in a city council meeting that a debt exclusion was not necessary. And the city administration insisted that it was necessary, otherwise the school wouldn't be built.
Right.
Then, after the debt exclusion was passed, the city administration turned around and said, yeah, we didn't need the debt exclusion. They admitted that they misrepresented it. And, that's the problem we're having in Fall River. We don't know who to believe anymore, and we want to put our trust in someone, and we're looking for, that golden person.
Leadership instead of gamesmanship.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, everything's a political game, and we're seeing it more and more, just like we're seeing with this Kathy Ann Viveris campaign running for mayor. Yeah. She's run 5 times. I've worked on one of her campaigns, and I'll tell you, 5 times she's run, 5 times she's lost. And I'm not saying she can never win, but she's got to change the way she does it, and she's got to change her position on things.
So my problem isn't with Kathy Ann. It's with the choice she made.
Right.
So, none of that was meant to be any direction in terms of voting. I had to say what I thought. I mean, we all saw, we all heard the audio tapes, right?
But that's what I'm looking for. I know personally, that's what I'm looking for in a candidate. Somebody who's going to say what needs to be said and not worry about the political fallout.
The obvious fact. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because we hear it all the time from the city council when they're approving things like TIFs. Yeah. They just approved, they haven't approved them yet, it's going to be going to city council, but the TIF board just approved 2 TIFs for 2 properties which were already purchased by Bob Karam and Anthony Cadero, and they're going to give them a TIF. They give these people TIFs for apartments.
Yeah.
TIFs, I've always learned that a TIF, and I learned this from a couple of very knowledgeable people, a TIF is a diamond in the rough, okay? And we should treat those like gold and like a diamond and give them out when we're going to get something back tremendously. We're not going to get anything back from market rate apartments.
Well, that's not true. And it just isn't, because what you get back is population that is spending money in the downtown area, right? So, we know that's going to come along with the development of the waterfront. Frankly, that's where the demand in the marketplace is. It's for residential. That's because of the Boston market and the pressure that's building out of the Boston market for pricing on residential housing. And the access to this model is played out in other communities. The access to the train will spark a certain type of investment, and residential will be one of the primary drivers of that. Our office market is, the economy's been doing fine. I'm sure our office market's doing well, but it's not the pressure. It's not the same pressure that's being built out of Boston, on the residential market. And so, yeah, that's where some of the initial investment will be. Now, as you get population to locate around there, and by the way, I think they're looking at mixed use too, where the bottom floors of these buildings are most likely going to be retail of some type, or there should be inclusion. I would advocate for inclusion of some office space. You want to planning school, everybody started off with the book by Jane Jacobs, which talks about, making sure that you have people throughout the day circulating through your neighborhood. So you want residential and office and and you want the tourism destination as well. However, let me say this, just to give you credit for pointing this out, I think you do want to make sure that you're getting value for your tax credits, period. I spent, a good portion of my career, pricing those tax packages and providing the incentive to the businesses. So I do understand how that works, and I understand how to build the models, because that's what I did.
I think one of the reasons why I firmly believe that the TIFs should be handled very sparingly is because it's coming out of my tax dollars, and that money still needs to be paid. And who pays that money is the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So
So what do you want to see with it? Are you going to say jobs? That's what I was thinking you might say.
I'm not necessarily for jobs, because we've never, historically, in Fall River, we've never issued a TIF where jobs were so required that if you didn't meet the need, you just took the TIF back.
Yep.
And we can look at that from the Amazon project. 1,500 jobs they were supposed to have. They're having a difficult time getting that many people. And the worst part about it is not all of them, not a significant number are coming from Fall River. So what benefit does it have? My thing about the market rate housing, and that's one of the reasons why I call this, is because of the market rate housing entrance into the Fall River rental market. Rents are starting to gradually climb, even in the three-deckers.
That's true.
And what's happening is that people, and you got to remember, you have a population of about 60%, which is at or below.
I live in a three-decker.
Right.
So
at or below the poverty level. When you're looking at a population like that. So how is somebody who's getting, $800 a month from their retirement supposed to pay $1,500 for rent?
Yeah.
And when you consider the fact that our housing authority for subsidized housing has got a waiting list, now they're saying, and this was said today by...
Which is a statewide waiting list, I believe.
Well, for Section 8, it's relatively long. It's about 7 years.
Yeah.
And but for some of the housing apartments here, they have waiting lists of 20, 30, 40 people waiting, and they wait up to a year just to get an apartment. And, this is going to increase homelessness, I believe, in Fall River.
I agree with you.
And we have nothing that's addressing that factor.
So, well, that's not true. We haven't made much news out of it, but people have been working on this issue. So one of the things that I do with my, my time and at Bay Coast Bank, even as a representative of Bay Coast Bank, I sit in on the task force to end homelessness. And one of the things that we did this summer, while I, in the middle of a campaign, was I worked with a group of more than 10 service providers to put together a proposal, an application. Ultimately, we worked with the housing authority. They had the authority to submit that application themselves without any additional oversight from the city. But it required that they had a partnership with local service providers, and the program is called the Mainstream Voucher Program. And we don't know if we've received these vouchers yet, but the idea is that we have applied for it, and it could be a nice source of relief to speak to especially people. It will help people who are at risk of homelessness. It helps people who are homeless. It helps people who are coming out of institutionalization. And the whole idea is that it provides the nonprofit partners provide the supports that are necessary, to help the folks sort of reintegrate, or just continue along their path, to contributing.
Yeah, I like the fact that you've done some volunteer work in homelessness and trying to create a program as a volunteer to work program. I think that's a novel idea which has worked in other places, and I know it has.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to see if things like that could work here in Fall River.
Yeah. Let's give it a try.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen? It could fail, and that's it. But
oops,
what's the best thing that can happen?
Maybe we'd learn something.
Right, and we learned. And failure isn't failure. Failure is just a learning experience.
If you have good intentions, you should give it a try.
Exactly. Now, here's the big issue here in Fall River: opioid addiction.
Yeah.
Opioid addiction. As you remember, Star has now gotten a permit for the Weaver Street property to build a methadone clinic and a treatment center.
Yep.
But they don't have a permit for beds. So that's halfway to the point. What was your take on that? Because a lot of people in the North End, in that particular area, didn't want that.
Of course, right. So, and that's a predictable behavior. I've encountered it with several economic development projects that I've worked on throughout my career, including the offshore wind farm on Block Island. Right, there was a negative response. It creates a change, different view. People didn't like the uncertainty of what that change could be. Ultimately, it really comes down to how well do you actually manage it, right? So. I've heard arguments of all types about why we shouldn't allow any more addicts into the community. Why we don't need more beds, why we've done enough, right? And I simply don't buy that argument. I do look at it. I gave a speech where I said something about let's just follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I mean, I've had significant others, no significant others, but loved ones that that had issues with opioids, and it's painful. It's to see the deterioration and how the drug changes you and your behavior. We all go through it. There's definitely resentment. I can understand the anger. I've lived it. So. I mean, what we need to do is make sure that we're handling the problems. We're doing what we need to handle the problem along the way. You can't just say, I don't want to deal with this problem anymore. That is not the solution. I promise you that.
Oh, I agree. Having a background in nursing for my entire life almost, I know what it is. And I am not a supporter of more beds in Fall River.
Yep.
And my rationale for that is the fact that beds are controlled by the state. They're not controlled by the organization. Right. So what happens
is the funding is controlled by the state,
but what happens is if somebody goes to Star and says, I want to go into detox, Star's got to call the state, and the state says send them to Attleboro, send them to,
And so one of the points I make is, having had loved ones go through recovery, I know that they did it in other communities. I don't know many people that recovered from opioids, and I know dozens. Thank God, but they didn't. Most of them didn't recover here. Some of them recovered in jail. A lot of them, several of them, recovered in Falmouth in particular.
Right, exactly.
And that's the way it works. And so, how are you going to feel when Falmouth decides to shut its door to Fall River folks? That's not the way it works. I mean, I was speaking with someone in Taunton, and they were saying, we take in the Fall River people specifically so that they don't have to stay in Fall River. So we have to wake up a little bit. I frankly just don't agree with and don't appreciate the arguments, that say that we've done enough. I think we have to do the hard work, not run from it. Deal with the problem from beginning to end. Deal with it on a prevention side. You're dealing with it in terms of early intervention and making sure that you've got good information and you're acting on it early in terms of, this person had an overdose. How do we get involved and try to, do whatever we can, put whatever protections or helps in place to, get this person in the best position to recover. I understand you can't force somebody to recover.
Exactly.
And that's one of the awful things about the disease. But when people are ready to, you got to make sure that you have those.
There's a lot of denial.
It's a sort of, on average, you got to be able to help over time, and that's the only way this will not be a growing problem, and it'll start to be a shrinking problem.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, believe it or not. So I want to give you a last couple of seconds to send your message to the people of Fall River.
Yeah. So again, my name's Tim Cole, running for City Council. I think I really appreciate your vote because, like I said, I'm in this for the right reasons. I'm only interested in helping to make Fall River better. Sometimes I might say some things that you don't agree with. That will happen. But hopefully we can all get along and learn to work together, because I've got a good skill set to get things done, and that's what I hope to do.
Well, it's been great to having you here, and I hope that we see you again soon.
Okay.
And I hope good luck on your campaign.
Thank you, CJ.
Have a great day.
Yep.